So I just started putting these songs up recently, mainly to get my own stuff up there. That's been going on for about 10 days, but I've thought of some other things, mainly around singing specifically, and generally around the helpfulness or not of fellow musicians. And what I have found, and it may just be my particular personality or way of being, but I found many fellow musicians would give you the pitying look when you flub a chord or, you do any little thing wrong, and, they'll give you that pitying look. Or you go to play a song in a certain key and someone will say, well, that's not the right key, as if there aren't 100 covers by 100 different bands in all different keys. So they really can be unhelpful. And I got lucky because I had a friend who had very few preferences anyway and didn't seem to mind that I made mistakes. And I tend to play beyond my capabilities, which makes for mistakes, but it's also my way of learning. And he was okay and a good enough musician that he could follow me wherever I went. Whether it was being creative in a good way. Well, being creative is always good, but often I could be creative, change something around, slow it down, speed it up, do an instrumental break, and it would sound good, but he was able to, basically follow me wherever I went. So, yeah, and of course it's only the people who other people don't consider to be a proper musician that get talked to. Although I told a story about Neil Young being at one of his first rock concert for Ethiopia or something, and somebody coming over after he had sang a song or two and saying, "You're singing off key," and Neil saying, "That's the way I sing, man." So, but another interesting thing is music exercises. And when I do music exercises or when I took courses, often you can't repeat what they're asking you to repeat. You sound like you don't know how to sing. So I'm going to just do a little one here. This is Dr. Dan's Essentials. Do 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 do. Do 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 do. And I play that to show, even though I sound like I can sing when I'm singing a song, you can't judge your singing ability by what you sound like when you're doing warm-up exercises. And if you've taken music lessons, voice lessons, they get you to do all sorts of weird things. So, and I sort of set a challenge to myself this morning is to go through my songs I wrote and try to do them differently. And how I wrote my first couple songs, I drove to a beach I like to camp at sometime, just in the back of my poor man's RV, which is the back of my truck. And so when I wanted to write music, I sat on the beach and I first wrote down all the things that people write music about. Midnight, trains, nasty women, long fingernails, yada yada. So I came up with 2 or 3 songs. One was Big Hair, in which I inadvertently stole the first 3 lines of an Eagles tune. Waiting for Jeffrey, but yeah, I just wrote down all the words that a lot of pop, rock, folk songs, blues are written about, and then just use that as a basis. So if I'm gonna die, trying to do it differently than I usually do it. If I'm gonna die, I wanna be high. If I'm gonna die, I wanna be high. If I'm gonna die, I surely wanna be high. If I'm gonna die, I wanna be high. If I'm a dancer, I wanna be high when I die. Not too much different, mainly slower and a little bit bassier. So, and this is the one where the first three lines are inadvertently copied from an Eagles tune, Witchy Woman, I think. Raven hair, ruby lips, bad vibes sparkle from her fingertips. So those two lines, I think, are direct from Witchy Woman. Speaking of Witchy Woman, I listen to a lot of radio, CBC and Deutsche Welle, etc. And so they were talking about the women in the Second World War flying these super basic biplanes, and they would harass the German soldiers by dropping bombs out of their cockpit and onto the soldiers. And sometimes they'd drop food. And they carried no guns, no protection, and they literally just threw bombs out of their cockpit. Sometimes they delivered food, they'd swoop in really low, and they'd call to them, food coming, and they'd drop sacks of potatoes out of their thing. They had no brakes on them. They were so simple. They basically came in a box. They came in the engine was hard to get going, but once it got going, it couldn't be stopped. So, and they were called night witches. So if you look that up, you can find it. You probably find stuff. Raven hair, ruby lips, bad vibes sparkle from her fingertips, looking like a movie queen. Just ain't no way that kind of woman's for me, 'cause I want teacher smarts. No silly talk, I'm a sensible man, no want no man-made parts. No, not in any bottle frizzies, I want teacher smart. And no silly birds, but I like big hair. Hold on to ruby lips, good to kiss. Movie queen just wants a long ways, but just ain't no way she's kind of woman for me, 'cause I want teacher smart. No silly talk, I'm a sensible man, I want no man-made parts. No, not in any bottle frizzies, I want teacher smart. And no silly tarts, but I admit, way back when, I never knew about real big hair to hold on to, and now ruby lips and that movie queen, yeah, we all live together in our brand new scenes. I thought I wanted richer smarts, no silly talks. I thought I was a sensible man that didn't want no man-made parts. No, not in any bottle frizzies. I thought I wanted teacher smarts and no silly tarts. But sometimes those silly tarts are pretty good for a silly man. So I didn't make that one or even the other one all that much different, but that sort of shows something too.